Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Hey everyone, welcome into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. If you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button below. Also, be sure to leave a like. If you are subscribed, be sure to hit that notification bell so you can turn on your notifications so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. I am going to be here each week to break down the latest in Crimson Tide football recruiting news. On the original schedule of The Process, we are usually trying to bring you guys 2 shows a week every Tuesday and Thursday. Due to the high school football season, I was mostly just doing 1 show a week because I was hitting the road on Thursday. But with things slowing down a bit at the moment, with the early signing period quickly approaching, we are going to try to give you guys at least 2 shows a week heading into the National Signing Day, the first signing day of the 2022 recruiting cycle. And on today's episode, I want to preview an interesting weekend for the Crimson Tide on the recruiting trail. At the beginning of the week, it did not look like the Crimson Tide were going to have a big recruiting weekend. This recruiting weekend is not big in terms of a lot of big names coming to Tuscaloosa, but this could be a significant recruiting weekend when you consider the recruits who are expected to officially visit, including 5-star wide receiver Evan Stewart out of Texas, and also the Crimson Tide's top in-state targeting 4-star defensive lineman Curtis Perry. The Crimson Tide will also host 2 of their 2022 commits for official visits as well. I will preview each of those guys' official visits on this episode of The Process. But before I get an opportunity to look at those prospects, I do want to get you guys with a couple of quick recruiting updates, starting with the Crimson Tide offering 2024 defensive back Ellis Robinson, who is a native of New Haven, Connecticut, but he actually attends a Iona preparatory school in New York at the moment, and the Crimson Tide offered him on Wednesday. That offer came from the Crimson Tide's offensive line coach Doug Marrone. And when you take a look at what Robinson brings to the table, there's a lot to like about this young budding prospect. I think he's going to be one of the top defensive backs in the 2024 recruiting class. Like I say all the time when I talk about younger guys, he is a prospect to just keep in the back of your mind because he is a 2024 recruit. We have to get finished with the 2022 class, transition to the 23 class, and complete that class before the 2024 prospects are our main focus for a lot of D1 college football programs. But he is a guy I want to introduce you guys to. I want to consistently introduce you guys to prospects, just paint a picture of how long Alabama's coaching staff recruits a lot of these prospects and how long they try to build a relationship with some of these guys. But another prospect I want to talk about today is a guy who actually got an offer from the Crimson Tide after he put together a magnificent junior season. He actually camped at the University of Alabama during the summer, but he did not receive an offer. But the prospect I'm talking about is a 2023 4-star offensive lineman who is playing his high school football in Connecticut after transferring from Finland. He's a Finland native, transferred to the United States, moved to the United States to play his high school football. And I'm talking about Ola Neenen. He is a 6'7", 300-pound offensive lineman who is projected to be an offensive tackle at the next level. The Crimson Tide offensive line coach Doug Marrone also offered him recently, and he told me that that offer was a dream offer for him. He's actually already locked in an unofficial visit date to the Crimson Tide to visit Alabama next Tuesday. He will be on the campus of the University of Alabama next week to just check out the campus a little bit more, an opportunity to take in what all Alabama has to offer its student athletes after camping at Alabama during the summer. But now I am going to transition into some of the guys who will be on the campus of the University of Alabama this weekend for official visits. And the guy who headlines this list of visitors is 5-star wide receiver Evan Stewart out of Texas. Alabama got him on campus actually during the summer, so they're going to get him on campus again this weekend for an official visit. And I think this is one to definitely keep your eyes on. First, Evan Stewart may well be and it's arguably the best wide receiver in the 2022 recruiting class. He's a complete wide receiver in my mind, one of the best route runners in this class easily. He's a guy who can do a little bit of everything at the wide receiver position. And if you are a wide receiver coming out of high school and you are getting recruited by the Crimson Tide, it is no doubt and it's not hard to see why any prospect will consider the Crimson Tide when you take a look at the way that they have developed wide receivers. So looking at the last couple of drafts, they have consistently put wide receivers in the NFL, but not only put them in the NFL, but those guys were first round draft picks. Just looking at guys like Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, and Henry Ruggs. So the Crimson Tide have a great reputation with wide receivers at the moment. Taking a look at what Evan Stewart brings to the table, I am pretty sure the Crimson Tide will have no problem developing him into a elite prospect at the college level and a guy who could be an elite prospect at the NFL combine and being an NFL prospect one day. So the Crimson Tide definitely have to make up some ground with Evan Stewart. They have consistently recruited him, but for the last couple of weeks or months, basically, we have seen a lot of Texas A&M, a lot from Texas. We have even heard that Florida had some momentum for Evan Stewart at one point, but the Crimson Tide, there's not been a lot of talk about the Crimson Tide possibly leading or possibly being in an intense battle to land the 5-star wide receiver. But with the Crimson Tide hosting him for an official visit this weekend, things could change pretty quickly. So that is definitely an official visit to pay attention to. Of course, the next guy I'm going to talk about, I talk about him all the time. I feel like he's just a staple in the show and just a constant update, a constant story on the process. But he is a guy who is definitely worth getting attention from, and definitely a guy Alabama fans need to pay attention to. We are talking about Curtis Perry, the 4-star defensive lineman out of Pike Road High School in Pike Road, Alabama. He will officially visit Alabama this weekend, of course, but he will also take an official visit to Auburn next week. So the Crimson Tide will have an opportunity to show what they can do to Perry 2 weeks back to back. Of course, he will be officially visiting Auburn next week, so they will not have an opportunity to host and talk to them and just have a good time with them or anything next week. But this week and this weekend, they will have an opportunity to do that. And when you take a look at Curtis Perry's recruitment, it looks as if it's going to be a Iron Bowl recruiting battle. It is going to come down to the 2 in-state programs, which is something that seemed like it was going to happen at the very beginning of Curtis Perry's recruitment. Just going through the recruiting process that he has enjoyed, Auburn and Alabama have always been staples in his recruitment. So in my mind, I think it's going to come down to the 2 in-state programs, but I do feel Alabama is in the lead, and I feel they are the favorite for the 4-star recruit heading into a December decision. I want to close out today's show by talking about a pair of Alabama commits who will be on campus as well. One of those guys is Kobe Prentice, the 4-star wide receiver out of Calera High School in Calera, Alabama. What a big season he had basically for the Eagles in Calera, basically showing off that game-breaking speed that he possesses. If you guys remember, he ran a 4.3 in the 40-yard dash when the Crimson Tide hosted him for an unofficial visit and had an opportunity to see him camp during the summer. And after that impressive camp performance, the Crimson Tide instantly put an offer on the table, and it seems like he was committed to the school a couple of days later. Basically, I think a couple of weeks later after he decommitted from Maryland. But the Crimson Tide picked up a huge commitment from Kobe Prentice when he flipped from Maryland. That was a significant get for Alabama because of what Kobe Prentice brings to the table. Like I said, one of the top wide receivers in the 2022 recruiting class and one of the fastest prospects in the class overall. So the Crimson Tide were lucky to get a commitment from him. They will have him on campus this weekend, so he'll get an opportunity to just enjoy campus because he has visited this season before, so he's not unfamiliar with the program. But I think this gives him an opportunity for him and his family to enjoy a full game day weekend in Tuscaloosa and just get wine and dine basically as an unofficial visitor. And the last unofficial visitor the Crimson Tide are expected to have on campus this weekend is Sean Murphy, a fellow Alabama commit, a 5-star linebacker out of Unity Reed High School in Manassas, Virginia. He has been verbally committed to Alabama since July, and he has been one of the verbal commits for the Crimson Tide, who has been really verbal on Twitter, just recruiting a lot of guys for the Crimson Tide. I remember when he first committed to Alabama, he said he was going to try to bring the best players in the 2022 recruiting class with him to Tuscaloosa, and he's definitely trying to do that. We have seen him on Twitter recruiting guys like Shemar James and Earl Little Jr. He will have an opportunity to recruit a lot of guys basically in person this weekend. I expect him to have a lot of conversations with Evan Stewart and also Curtis Perry on this weekend. So Sean Murphy, I think, will be like an extra recruiter on the campus this weekend for the Crimson Tide. So those are the recruiting updates I wanted to provide you guys with today. A list of those official visitors. We can take a look at guys like Evan Stewart, the 5-star wide receiver, Kobe Prentice, Sean Murphy, and also Curtis Perry heading to Tuscaloosa this weekend to take those official visits. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. If you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button below. Also, be sure to leave a like whether you are subscribed or not. If you are a subscriber, hit that notification bell. Make sure you turn on all of your notifications so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. Then head over to touchdowналabama.com. Pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles. Get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue as well. Then head to the Google Play Store for my Android users to download the Touchdown Alabama app. If you are an Apple device user, be sure to head to the Apple App Store to download the Touchdown Alabama app as well. With that app, breaking news notifications can be sent to your mobile device. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst at Touchdown Alabama.